What's happening, everybody? It's your boy Sports PSP. Welcome to a special episode of the Sports PSP podcast. Sorry we couldn't do a show on Friday night, guys. Sports PSP needed to take some time off, and unfortunately, in the state of New Jersey, my home area had a power outage. It didn't take me until like a day and a half to get my power back. I had to get it back last night. But thank you to PSCNG, all the great men and women who stayed all night and had to alternate shifts just in order for us to get the power back. But anyway, although my man Champ says highlight of Friday nights, tonight is the highlight of Sunday nights because we do have an excellent show for you today. I cannot do the Sports PSP podcast without my main guy, Undisputed World Champ. Please go like and subscribe to his YouTube, IG, and especially his TikTok. He's putting out great content. And please also go check out his latest video on Shedeur Sanders possibly going to the San Francisco 49ers, just in case if the 49ers are not sure on Brock Purdy. But how you doing, big fella?
I'm doing okay, man. And look, about that video, man, I'm going to just put it out there. All of that credit, that was not my idea. That was PSP's idea. So I give him credit for that because I really didn't think about that whole scenario. So I have to give you your flowers on that because I'm like, because in my mind, I'm like, there's no way in HE double hockey sticks that they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders and they got Brock Purdy's contract coming up. But the way you broke it down to me, I was like, oh, that is good. And like I said, before that, somebody was telling me that. But when you brought it up, I'm like, wait a minute, that's something to consider. So I got to give you your flowers on that. As far as the show is going, like I always say, if we don't get you on the wash, we'll definitely get you on the rinse. And Sunday night is the rinse. So let's go ahead. Let's rinse this up for them tonight, PSP.
Absolutely. And but I told you, the 49ers don't rule out the possibility of Shedeur Sanders. You said it yourself. I would love to see Shedeur Sanders tank because some team that's in desperate need of a quarterback, that's the right situation for him. And we all know his father, Prime. He used to play for the San Francisco 49ers. He's familiar with the Bay Area. And what better way to work with an offensive play caller like a Kyle Shanahan? And he doesn't have to go start right away, champ. He can just sit and learn the offense as much as possible. You have weapons around you in George Kittle. Okay, Debo is gone. We'll talk about Debo later on in the show. But Brandon Ayuk is coming back. Hopefully, when healthy, Christian McCaffrey is coming back. And Robert Saleh, he's now back as the defensive coordinator. So I like it for the San Francisco 49ers. They're going to be a team to be a surprise back in the NFC. They're going to get back into that playoff picture. I believe that for a fact. It's still going to be them and the Rams, but don't sleep on the San Francisco 49ers. But champ, the big news, Myles Garrett. It's shocking to me, champ, because he requested to be traded. And now, and at one point, the Browns did offer him, and it was reported he turned it down. But with this contract, the Browns signed Myles Garrett to a record-breaking contract extension that averaged $40 million per season, including $123.5 million guaranteed. I mean, doesn't that make him the highest non-quarterback in the NFL? And just a few days ago, Mason Crosby got that big-time contract with the Raiders. And shout outs to you. You did a great job with your analysis on TikTok, champ. For Cleveland, okay, it's great that you still have Myles Garrett. But if you're Myles Garrett, I thought you wanted to win. Now, he's well deserving of the money, champ. Don't get me wrong. But Cleveland, there's no chance for them to win. I mean, you have the second overall pick in the draft. We already talked about Deshaun Watson. We don't need to go any further. We already know. When you look at the rest of the AFC North, it's still Baltimore's team. Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin is still going to be there. So I still believe Pittsburgh is still going to compete. And we'll talk about the Bengals later on in the show because they're a mess. But that's the story. But that's later on for the show. I get it, Myles Garrett. He's well deserving of the money, champ. One of the preeminent defensive players, one of the preeminent players in the NFL. But at the same time, man, and also too, he has a no trade clause. So he can determine where he wants to be traded. But with that being said, champ, I thought he was interested in winning. Ain't no chance in hell, in the words of Vince McMahon, ain't no chance in hell Cleveland is winning anytime soon. So what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, but when they give you enough money to air condition hell, it's kind of hard to turn it down at a certain point. I mean, 123 million guaranteed. Wow, that is amazing. I never thought I'd see a defensive player. Almost his whole contract is pretty much guaranteed, and rightfully so. But I'm not going to tell you any stories. They had to sell him on a bill of goods in order to be able to sell him on getting that contract. And I'm not going to tell you any lies. I do not blame Cleveland for offering him that huge contract, because I'd be darned if I'm going to let my best player go to another team and win a Super Bowl. I would just assume overpay you and keep you here for the rest of the time being. Now, look, they've tried to build it on the offensive side of the ball. Go ahead and try it on the defensive side of the ball. You saw that Zadarius Smith just got released by the Detroit Lions. Yeah, see if you can bring him back. You know, in order to rebuild, in order to just go ahead and just build on this defense, or your top prospect is in the draft is Abdul Carter. He's a very good edge rusher, and see if you can do exactly what the Denver Broncos did with DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller, and see if they can take you to a Super Bowl and do it defensively. They're kicking this ball on down the road with Deshaun Watson. As you saw, they freed up some money so they can.
Yes, they did restructure his contract.
Yeah, they did restructure his contract, and looking back on it, this was what it was for. And, you know, they was over the cap at a certain point. But I don't blame Myles Garrett for taking that contract. I don't think he was going to get that anywhere at these super contending teams. And like I said, for the Cleveland Browns, I'm not about to let you go to Philly. You're not about to go to San Francisco. And you're sure as heck not about to go within my division and go to Pittsburgh and win 2-3 Super Bowls. I would just assume overpay you at this point. And I don't blame the Cleveland Browns. It's like, hey, it's cheaper to keep them because guess what? It's going to cost you more in the long run. And the thing is, with the draft coming up, I don't think teams were as anxious in order to give up a lot in order to get Myles Garrett. It would have taken the farm, the horse, the car, and the Corvette in order to get him. So I don't think teams was very, very anxious, although he is a generational talent, in order to get him at this point, because they would have had to give up a little bit of too much. And the only teams that could have afforded to give that to them was contending teams who was, you know, late in the draft. So I don't think guys were, and even with some of the contending teams that would make the championship games last year, they still have things they have to address as well. The Buffalo Bills, they need a pass rusher. But guess what? Because they just released Von Miller, they need another pass rusher. But it would have took a lot in order for them to get it. They still have to fulfill needs elsewhere. Your Washington Commanders, they needed a pass rusher, but they just lost Jonathan Allen, and they lost Montez Sweat and Chase Young consecutive years. So they have a lot of needs they have to fulfill. When you look at the only team that was just void of any big-time player was the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. But everybody else who were contending teams, they pretty much would have had to give up a lot in order to get him, which would have set them a little bit behind. So with the exception of the Eagles and the Chiefs. But yeah, I don't blame Cleveland for overpaying him, and I don't blame Myles Garrett for taking that contract. Like I said, they had to take him behind closed doors and say, look, this is our plan. Because Deshaun Watson's contract, his last year is next year. So, I mean, it's only a matter of time. Not to mention, from what I've read, they plan on re-signing Nick Chubb as well. That was part of the deal as well. So that gets complicated because
his injuries.
Because of his injury. On the other hand, me being the Georgia Bulldog that I am, he did it before, he can do it again. So, you know, there's a lot of up and down situation with that. But as far as Myles Garrett, I don't blame him for taking the contract, and I don't blame Cleveland for offering it to him. Guess what? I would rather overpay you for years to come than for you to go somewhere else and make us look silly in our own division. Can you have imagined Myles Garrett with the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think the only
Could you
reason
have
why
imagined him in San Francisco?
I think the Eagles only interfered because there was discussions about Washington trying to trade him. And I told you before about Howie Roseman. I told people he's the best executive in football. Don't be surprised he may try to do something. Now, fortunately for me, even though we didn't get Myles Garrett, Philly didn't get him either. And plus, he was letting go of some noticeable players. He let go of Darius Slay. He let go of, didn't he let go of Josh Sweat?
Yeah, I think Josh Sweat is gone.
Right. So seemed to me he wanted to let go of his old players, clear up some cap space, and see what he can do to try to get Myles Garrett. But fortunately, that wasn't the case. But I mean, that would be unfair, champ, to put Myles Garrett with the Philadelphia Eagles just fresh off from winning the Super Bowl, and to put him with Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nakobe Dean, that defense with Vic Fangio. Nah, that'd be unfair, man. I mean, they already had ice cream with all the sprinkles. What else? You want the whipped cream? You want the caramel? You want the banana? You want all that? You want the strawberries? How much more can you get in Philadelphia, which is Chocolate City? So, yeah, I mean, look, man, Philadelphia, I mean, they already got enough. But I'm happy for Myles Garrett regarding the money part, champ. But winning, they're not going to win anytime soon. So is Myles Garrett, is he willing to accept the reclamation process? Because that's what it looks like for Cleveland so far for now.
He's gonna have to, because he had to, like I said, they had to take him behind closed doors and say, we need you here in order to have a building block for you, in order to have a building block for years to come.
Yes.
Because if they take Abdul Carter, then that's a cornerstone for your defense for at least the next 5 years, at least until the prime of his career. If they just say, okay, look, we know we're not going to win on offense too much. Let's just go pure defensively and see if we can win there and win with ball control and see if we can sneak a quarterback in the second round or something like that and see if we can kind of sneak it off. Yeah, they had to have conversations. But unfortunately for Myles Garrett this year, I don't think you're going too much of anywhere. Even if you do get Abdul Carter or Zadarius Smith back at this point, I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. I'm going to quote a great man, a man that shares my last name, my father. It was championships versus the bag, and the bag won in this situation. Now, and fortunately for Myles Garrett, he's been one of the best pass rushers in the league in this generation. He was able to obtain the bag, and I think that, hey, and it's also a bit of comfort within that franchise. You don't necessarily know how much comfort you're going to have in another franchise. But, yeah, they had to have went behind closed doors with him and said, hey, this is our plan. This is our reclamation project. We're going to get you what you need on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to get some things in place, and we're going to get us back in the position in order to win the championship. But I will say this. You getting a new contract don't mean much, because that just makes you easier to trade. We've seen plenty of times where guys sign these big, huge contracts and then they're traded within a year or two after the contracts. We've seen it. So that doesn't mean you're not tradable. Now, granted, you have a no trade clause, so you have to relinquish that trade. You have to relinquish that no trade clause. But just because you sign that new contract does not mean you're not tradable, because certain assets are tradable. And if teams offer you a haul in order to get it, and if a team offers you a haul in order to get you, then unfortunately you're expendable at a certain point. But Myles Garrett has to accept the fact that, hey, you chose the bag over winning championships, over going to the 49ers, over going to the Steelers, over going to one of these premier teams, even going to the Washington Commanders or one of those places. You chose the bag. So guess what? You got your wish and everything that goes with it. And you have to start asking yourself at this point in time, you got to start asking yourself this. Is players saying in the NFL that I want to be traded? Do they really want to be traded, or is this a ploy for them to get paid?
In this situation, he definitely wanted his money,
So I mean,
and he got it.
and he got it. So you got to start asking yourself this question: when somebody say, "I want to be traded from now on," are you trying to be traded for real, or you trying to be paid? Because if you wanted to be traded, I believe if you would have made a stink about it, because you went on practically a world tour on saying, "I want to be traded. I want to be traded. I want to be traded." But then, like I said, they back that Brinks truck up to your house, and then all of a sudden, I don't want to be traded no more. But understand what comes with this bag. It's a lot of responsibility and a lot of, you know, you kind of being quiet about it because you chose that bag over championship. So just remember what happened, Myles Garrett. I'm happy for you, but remember what you signed up for.
I'm reading a statement here from Nicole Lynn, who is the agent of Myles Garrett. Andrew Berry, who's the GM of the Cleveland Browns, and I spent the last 36 hours getting the deal done. Basically, Myles had a change of heart, and he's excited to go from Cleveland to Canton and chase a championship in Ohio. When he made that decision, he said, I want to get this done before free agency so I can start recruiting free agents so I can help the team. And I said, all right, we have 24 hours to get this done. And we did it. I'm reading here a little bit in the statement from Cleveland.com from Mary Kay Cabot, who does a great job of covering the Cleveland Browns. Please go check her out. Says it right here. Browns owner Jimmy Haslam, who recently declined Garrett's request for a meeting, did speak top Garrett Sunday after the extension was agreed upon and congratulated him, a leaked source said. The extension adds a surprising twist to a saga that began on December 20th when Garrett revealed he might want out of the Browns if the Browns couldn't show him a blueprint for contending in 2025. So, look, champ, I hope it goes well for Myles Garrett. To your point, he chose the money instead of going somewhere else to compete. So, and I don't know, champ, to recruit free agents to come in Cleveland. No disrespect, Cleveland ain't the most desirable or attractive market. And on top of that, they're coming off a tumultuous season. Deshaun Watson, yes, he did restructure his contract, but he's not going to play this season because he ruptured his Achilles for the second consecutive time. So who's going to be at quarterback for them? Nick Chubb is recovering from an injury. Do you keep Jameis for another year?
You go out and see what you can find in the late rounds and in the early rounds. That's the only thing that you could do. I mean, see who's dropping and see whose stock is rising. And hey, that's all that you could do at this point. Now, like I said, I will go the defensive route and say, hey, look, Myles, we're going to either bring back Zadarius Smith or we're going to bring back Abdul Carter or we're going to draft Abdul Carter. I think that Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett would be one deadly combination. I think that will be a deadly combination for years to come. And, you know, especially him being on that rookie contract. But they have got to have a solid plan. And if he's trying to recruit guys as far as coming into Cleveland, the best way to sell that recruiting job is this. Yeah, you're not going to have the nightlife. You're not going to have the glitz and glamour. But think about what it would mean for you to win a Super Bowl on a team that hasn't won anything since the late, great Jim Brown, that has had so much, you know, just heartbreak, you know, Red Right 88, the drive, the fumble, the sale. Think about how good that will go on your resume if you're able to help the great Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns win a Super Bowl. That would be my pitch. Think about what LeBron did for the Cleveland Cavaliers and what he did for the city.
I was going to bring that up.
Think about what great minds think alike.
Great minds
think about what the great LeBron James was able to do for this city. Now amplify that times a million, maybe a billion, on what that would do for not only the city of Cleveland, but for the state of Ohio. You will have been in one you will have won a Super Bowl before the Cincinnati Bengals, who's had a better quarterback. Not once, not twice, but 3 times over. Remember Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton, now Joe Burrow. They had a better quarterback. They still haven't won. But think about how big this would be for the Cleveland Browns in order to finally bring a Lombardi trophy to a city with so much heartbreak in the sports community. A city that is looking once again to have a champion. A city who has a chance not only to win an NBA Finals this year with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but also an NFL championship, a Super Bowl.
Not to mention the fact that Ohio State did win a national championship this season.
Yes, that would be my pitch. Let's bring back the glory to Cleveland, just like Jim Brown did. And if you're able to recruit look, if there's any player that can recruit you, guess what? Myles Garrett can. I'm the best pass rusher in the league. I'm the best pass rusher in the league. And guess what? If you're a defensive player, you're going to love that because guess what? I don't have to worry about being double teamed. You're going to double team him. That's going to free me up. And if I'm Abdul Carter, I'm hoping that the Cleveland Browns draft me. That way, they're going to focus all that attention on Myles because they got tape on him already. They ain't necessarily got it on me. And you can't block both of them. Can't block both of them. You saw that with Harry Carson and Lawrence Taylor. You saw that with Greg Lord and Kevin Green. You saw that with a lot of other bookends. You saw that with Justin Tuck and Michael Strahan. Him and UCU in Europe.
Von Miller.
Yes. So Bradley Chubb and Von Miller. When DeMarcus Ware retired, they able to draft Bradley Chubb. So you can't block us all. So I would be diligently trying to recruit players based on look what we can do. Think about how much fame, notoriety, how much commercial success that would be for us to finally bring a championship back to the house that Jim Brown built, the house that Art Modell left, and something that nobody has been able to do, not even remotely. So that would be my pitch if I was Myles Garrett. And if anybody can recruit players right now, it will be Myles Garrett. And you got to think about the state of the sports community in Cleveland as well. It might not have the best nightlife, but like J.R. Smith said, when you don't have the great nightlife, that gives you an opportunity to focus. And when you're in a small market like Cleveland, who's desperately, looking for a winner, then you're the toast of the town when you're winning. So let's get it.
I'm sure that Champ would love to be the Cleveland Browns ambassador at some point in time. Heck, who knows? But Champ, let's talk about the big news. The Rams signed Davante Adams to a 2-year deal worth up $46 million with $26 million guaranteed, an average of $23 million per year. I like it for Davante because he stays in the West Coast. He's back in California. You have Sean McVay calling the plays for you. You have Matthew Stafford, your Georgia Bulldog. And by the way, Matthew Stafford last season played really well. Matter of fact, almost beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the divisional round. Was the only team that the Eagles gave the most trouble in the playoffs. You add him with a Kieran Williams, but I think Davante feels comfortable being the number 2 because right now it's got to be Puka Nacua at the number 1 wide receiver. They're going to move on from Cooper Kupp, but I like it for the Rams because it still keeps them competitive. You add another offensive component to the squad. Davante Adams may not be what he once was, but he still has some left in the tank, Champ. Plus, he can offer some guidance, some wisdom to Puka Nacua. So I like this. I think it's a good move for the Rams. Your thoughts?
I think there's a lot left in the tank, and I think that we didn't get a chance to see everything that he can do because his quarterback was Aaron Rodgers this year. And even with Aaron Rodgers, he still was able to get over 1,000 yards receiving. And that's no slight to Aaron Rodgers, but let's just face it. This wasn't 2010. This is 2025. And that was not the same. And in the great words of someone famous, that was not Aaron Rodgers that we're used to seeing. And, his ability had plummeted. There was a lot of stuff that was said within that franchise. That organization was in disarray. And we didn't get a chance to see what Davante Adams could do and how he could affect the game. Now, he's going to have a lot more opportunities because that deep ball, guess what? Matthew Stafford can throw it. He can chunk that thing. And the thing is, all the attention is not going to be on him. There's not going to be any distractions within that organization. Sean McVay is one hell of a coach on the offensive side of the ball. And guess what? The marketing. Can you imagine Davante Adams coming in and helping LA win another Super Bowl? One of the biggest media market in the league right now? That would be spectacular. I mean, they've already, ever since they gotten back to Los Angeles, they've already been to 2 Super Bowls and won 1. Can you imagine if Sean McVay got another one, especially in that division with the 49ers, with the Seattle Seahawks, with the Arizona Cardinals? All these teams are good teams. So I think that there's a good team. It has a lot of potential. You have Davante Adams, Puka Nacua, Blake Corum, Kieran Williams, and you have Blake Corum. That's a recipe for good things to happen. The only concern I really have is the offensive line. Offensive line, I have a little bit of concern that they just lost their right guard to the Chicago Bears. But, knowing Sean McVay, he was able to draft Puka Nacua and a lot of those great players out of the 6th and the 5th round. So guess what? I have nothing but faith in the Los Angeles Rams organization. As far as Davante Adams, guess what? It's really pick your poison. This has every potential to be the greatest show on turf, part 2 in Los Angeles. It has potential to even be a better offense than it was when they went to the Super Bowl because they have a 2-headed monster at the running back position. You have a good quarterback with Matthew Stafford. You have 2 hell of a receivers at this point. The only thing that I have questions about is the offensive line because they just lost their star guard. But other than that, I'm just going to be real. This acquisition has a lot of potential. I cannot wait to report on this. And this is going to be good, man. The San Francisco 49ers, they just lost Deebo Samuels. Brandon Ayuk is on the trading block. And the NFC West is changing at this point because a lot of those great players that San Francisco had, they're filtering them out at this point. There's no more Deebo Samuels. They're getting younger on that. So you have to wonder if this getting younger phase is going to come with growing pains. You still have the jury's still out on Arizona and Kyler Murray at this point. The jury's still out on him if he's going to be traded or if he's even going to be the quarterback or if he's the man at all. And the Seattle Seahawks just traded Geno Smith. So, and DK Metcalf is on the trading block.
And they let go of Tyler Lockett.
Yes, and they let go of Tyler Lockett. So you have to ask yourself, is this division now wide open if San Francisco is not able to make the right move?
Well, that's the thing. When I look at it with the Rams, champ, but you mentioned the offensive line, and I got to hold you at your word because you're the one who always says this. Quarterback cannot throw behind his back. Matthew Stafford just turned 37 years old. Mm-hmm. So, to me, you got to do everything you can to possibly protect him, and you're going to have to get somebody in the draft. I don't know how much money that the Rams have in cap space. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but they have to go back and get in some players in the draft, some offensive linemen to protect Matthew Stafford because he's not as mobile as he was in his early days in Detroit. He still can throw the ball deep. He still has an arm. He still has a cannon, but without an offensive line, champ, particularly at his age, that's a world of trouble.
Yeah, the quarterback can't throw on his back. So, I mean, if you don't believe that, just ask a lot of other quarterbacks. I mean, just ask Joe Burrow and ask Caleb Williams. So, y'all got to address that offensive line if y'all want to have something. But as far as weapons is concerned, I believe that they have every potential in order to be great.
Well, on paper, they can put up some points.
Yes.
They can put up some points. They can be a top 5, top 10 offense in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned Geno Smith. The Seattle Seahawks, they traded Geno Smith to the Las Vegas Raiders in exchange for a 3rd-round pick. Champ, to me, Seattle won this one. Unequivocally, they won this one because to get a 3rd-round pick for Geno Smith, where I think you could probably got him for like maybe a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick, but you get him for a 3rd-round pick, and there's a possibility you could get Sam Darnold. And not only that, remember, shout out to our guy, BRF. He's made the argument about Jackson Dart. Could he go to Seattle? And unfortunately for Seattle, they did lose. DK Metcalf did ask for a trade request. They did release Tyler Lockett. Although it's a kind of a good thing because GSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, he is going to be their number 1 wide receiver now. He's no longer the number 2 or number 3. He's now their number 1. So I think Seattle won this trade, champ. As for the Raiders, okay, Geno's there. Pete Carroll, I mean, of course, they have their relationship going back to their days in Seattle. I think Seattle won this trade, champ. But I wouldn't sleep on what the Raiders are possibly doing. What are your thoughts?
Seattle won. Seattle won unequivocally. My question to Oakland, Las Vegas, excuse me. My question to Las Vegas are you still going to draft a quarterback at this point? Geno Smith is 34 years old. He's looking for a new contract. And he had a lackluster year last year. And
reportedly, he wanted reportedly 40 to 45 million.
I pay him in monopoly. I pay him that in monopoly money. He ain't getting 40 million from me. But he was already on the last leg of that contract, that 3-year, $75 million contract. You're not getting 40 million, Geno. I'm sorry. That is reserved for all pro guys. So you're not an all pro. Granted, you made the Pro Bowl 2 years in a row. Good job. You proved you was not a bust. But and then again, people love putting the bust label on him. He was not.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chap. I hate to interrupt you. Breaking news. Man. Adam Schefter just reported the Bills are signing Josh Allen to a record-setting 6-year, $330 million contract extension that including $250 million guaranteed, which is the largest guarantee ever to an NFL player.
God damn.
So good for a guy who just won MVP, even though he was second team all pro.
That is amazing. He got paid. Look, if anybody deserved that fully guaranteed, guys like Josh Allen need to have his contract fully guaranteed, but because of what that dude in Cleveland did, I don't see any quarterbacks having guaranteed contracts from now on. But if anybody deserves that, it's him. Congratulations to Josh Allen and Bills Mafia. You have your quarterback for years to come. I just hope that you can get you a bowl, get you a Super Bowl. But
especially
back to
that fan base.
Yes, they deserve it. If anybody deserves a Super Bowl, it's Buffalo, man.
But back to Geno, I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just glad to be here, man. But back to Geno, man. You're not getting 40 million from me. Yeah, I hate to break it to you. You ain't getting it. In the great words of my aunt, you ain't getting it. It's going to be interesting to see what they do because they don't have the greatest offensive line in Oakland at this point. Excuse me, Las Vegas at this point. They do have weapons as far as Brock Bowers is concerned, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do on the receiver position because Hunter Renfrow just retired.
Yes, he did.
Hunter Renfrow just retired. So you got to ask yourself a lot of questions about what you're going to do about that receiving core. What are you going to do about that, about the O-line? What are you going to do about the running back position? You have a lot of questions and not enough money to go around. And be thankful that Pete Carroll is there because you have to get this draft right. You don't want to get it right. You got to get it right. Because this is going to hinge a lot of things going forward for the Las Vegas Raiders. You only got 3 years with Pete Carroll, 3. And he may very well retire. So while he's there, you need to get some stability about yourself. You have to get this draft right. Now, as far as getting a quarterback is concerned, you got one in order to get Brock Bowers the ball. You still have a lot to worry about on the outside. Got to worry about the running back position and everything else too. Not to mention, although you re-sign Max Crosby, you still have to worry about the defensive side of the ball. And you just got a new head coach. A whole nother philosophy is coming in there. It's not like that. Although Pete Carroll is the defensive coach, he's a far more enthusiastic coach than Antonio Pierce was. So there's a lot of changes that are made in this organization. Plus, Tom Brady is trying to build a winner at this point. So there's a lot of things that has to be done within that organization. Applause to the Oakland Raiders for getting a quarterback, possibly, bridging him out in order to get Shedeur Sanders, in order to say, hey, Geno, we'll sign you for these couple of years while we get Shedeur ready or get another quarterback ready. But outside of that, after these 2 years, you got to dip, man. That's what I see happening in Las Vegas. As far as Seattle is concerned, they're going through a minor rebuild. I don't think it's a major rebuild. I think it's a minor. They're trying to get some of the previous regime players out of there and trying to rebuild the team from scratch, because I think DK is going to leave. They just lowered the price from a first round and a third round pick to a second round pick. They just lowered the price. So you can rest assured a team that's looking for a receiver is probably going to get him. Don't be surprised if he ends up in Las Vegas. Don't be surprised. DK Metcalf. Don't be surprised. So don't be surprised. Him, Brock Bowers, that'll add some stability to. Plus, DK trying to get paid too. His contract's coming up.
And plus, we know who knows how much money that the Raiders have in cap space. Maybe they'll do something. Mm-hmm. But to me, champ, Seattle won this trade. You get a third round for Geno Smith, despite the season that he had. You would probably get like a 6th or a 7th. But a third? That's shocking to me. But they won that. But they won that trade, man. Speaking of another trade, we got to talk about Deebo Samuel. The Washington Commanders, they traded a 5th round pick to the San Francisco 49ers for Deebo Samuel, champ. Champ, I got to be honest with you. I'm not really all that excited about the pick. Does he add a running component to the offense? Yes. I do believe Cliff Kingsbury will do a great job utilizing Deebo Samuel. That ain't the problem. What have I told you before with my offense? My offensive line. Say what you always say, not on my pod, but everyone else's pod. Quarterback cannot what?
Throw on his back.
Now, in fairness to Washington, Jaden Daniels wasn't sacked that much. Washington's offensive line, to their credit, did a good job of protecting him. But there are other areas we need to address, champ. My defense, particularly the run defense. They were 30th in the NFL. We have to deal with Saquon twice a year. Not to mention, he did sign that record-breaking contract extension. Deservedly so. So for me, champ, I'm also not that excited because even you even called Deebo Samuel Manos de Piedra. Remember in that Thursday night football game in which he suffered against the Rams? Hey, am I lying?
No, you ain't lying. I was calling them hands of stone, and plus he was hitting them daiquiris and po' boys real hard at one point because it was noticeable. So
that's because he went with you.
Yeah, he was hanging out with me with daiquiris and po' boys, man. Them soft crab po' boy sandwiches is good, man. But look, y'all have an advantage this year. You want to know why? Deebo is in a contract year. So he playing for a contract. So players always go to try to either step up their game or going to have these otherworldly years when it comes to the contract year because they try to get paid. Deebo Samuels is a good second receiver. He's not going to have to worry about being the number one option. He's not going to have to worry about being utilized in every which way possible. I think people are going to lock in on Terry McLaurin, and I think that Deebo Samuels is going to do a good job. He will at least have a 1,000-yard season. Now, how great he is, are we going to see 2021 Deebo Samuels? It remains to be seen. But I think he's going to have a good year, especially, since he doesn't have to worry about being the number one option at this point. Now, there's a lot of things that I'm a little bit disappointed in your Commanders about because it's like Chicago been out here trading and willing and dealing
They
for
got
the
Joe
last
Thuney.
2 weeks. Yeah, in order to rebuild what their offensive line. They even was able to get Tooney from Kansas City for a fifth round or a third round pick.
Let me go double check.
I think they got an all pro offensive guard for a third round pick. So I'm kind of disappointed because you got a second option at receiver, but what
Not to
about
mention, not to mention, you've often said about the cap space that they have. They did a great job saving that much money in cap space.
Yes, they did a hell of a job. So the Chicago Bears, it seems like they went and got Tooney. They went and got the offensive guard from the Rams, and it seems like that the Washington Commanders have found a lag behind. I understand getting weapons, but those weapons aren't going to do you any good if your quarterback getting sacked 70 times a year.
A fourth round pick, champ.
Okay, so they got an offensive guard, all pro. This guy's been an all pro for the last 3 years for a fourth round pick. That should have been Washington. I understand you try to get more weapons, but you need that line. You need them hogs. So, yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed in Washington. Granted, Debo is a good pickup. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a good pickup. I think he's going to add another dimension to their offense, especially if they don't end up re-signing Austin Eckler. If Brian Robinson ends up leaving, I think he's going to add a dimension to the running game as well. But y'all need a line. And
That's
you
what I
just
was trying
lost
to tell you.
Jonathan Allen. So you just lost 3 pass rushers in the past 3 years. Lost Montez, which you warned me about. We almost had him down there in Magic City, but guess what? We couldn't get him because Chicago snuck in and got him. Then Chase Young, he left.
Not mad at that. Because again, he had durability problems. And remember, champ, we didn't pick up his 5th-year option. And had he had a breakout season, then Washington, they would have paid him a hell of a lot of money like the Giants did with Daniel Jones. We didn't want to do that.
No, I ain't mad at that. Plus, his lack of his effort and lack thereof. We expected him to be a Mario Williams or a Julius Peppers, and he's been lackluster at best.
And Jonathan Allen, look, at some point he was going to leave. Because remember, when he did that press conference after the Giants game a few years ago, that tells me everything I needed to know. There was every bit of indication he wanted to leave Washington. And look, with the new organization right now, I am disappointed we have not addressed the offensive line. I actually thought with the new organization, with Adam Peters, Josh Harris, Magic Johnson, okay, to me, maybe they feel like they want to try to do something come draft or whatever. But you need to get some offensive line because, again, you have to protect your most valuable investment in Jayden Daniels. But at the same time, we got to get some run stoppers, champ. And this is also a knock on Dan Quinn because last year, Washington, I'll repeat it again, they were 30th in the NFL in rushing defense. And let's not forget the job Dan Quinn did last year in his final year as a defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys with the run.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Arizona, you look at Philly, you look at Buffalo, you look at Green Bay, all those games in which they lost and they couldn't stop the run. The Philly game at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. When I look at Washington, Chip, I think they're probably going to take a step back because there's tape on them. I don't see them having the type of season that they had last season because there wasn't expectations for Washington. Now there are expectations. I believe Jayden Daniels will be okay. I still think they will compete for the playoffs. Who knows? We may win the division because even though that the Eagles are fully loaded, I'll bring it up, champ. When is it a team in that division has won it back-to-back years? I'm talking about the NFC East division.
They have it.
Right. So, and plus, there is a little hope though because you talk about my Commanders not doing anything in free agency. No surprise with the Dallas Cowboys. They restructured Dak's contract, CD's contract. They saved up $56.6 million in cap space, and you ain't going to address anything in free agency.
If they were going to address anything, they should have addressed getting Devontae Adams to go outside of CD Lamb. because that would have put them definitely in conversations that they needed to be in as far as the off-season Super Bowl is. But I don't know what Jerry is doing. I mean, Jerry. I mean, come on, bro. It's like I'm tired of you kind of, breaking mom's heart. You're breaking my mom's heart, man. My mom's a Cowboys fan, man. I'm getting tired of her getting mad at y'all on Sunday. Y'all got to do something. I mean, I understand. Now, I believe this move that the Dallas Cowboys did was to was to sign Micah Parsons.
Micah,
excuse me. Never get his name right. I think that them freeing up that kind of cap space was to re-sign Micah Parsons. That's what I believe that free up was for. To kind of kick the can on down the road a little bit. But as far as them making moves, y'all gotta do something. Y'all gotta do something. And I mean something drastic. I mean, Joey Bosa, he's in free agency. He's a reasonable pass rusher that you can add to this offense, add to this defense. There's a lot of moves in the draft that y'all can make. There has to be something that the Dallas Cowboys can do, because guess what? America's team, y'all got to do something. Y'all got to do something fast, because this is not going to cut it.
As for Washington, champ, I am concerned because, again, we still haven't addressed the needs after the 2024 season, which is offensive line and now defensive line. So we're going to have to start by going into the draft or finding some guys in free agency that are available. We got to get some run stoppers. We got to find guys who can stop the run. We also got to get linebackers. And also, we did re-sign Bobby Wagner. I do like that because Bobby Wagner is familiar with Dan Quinn's defense, and he is a leader of the team. So we need that type of leadership and stability if you're Washington. I just think with the offense, you're probably asking a lot more on Jayden Daniels' plate. And I think Jayden Daniels is highly capable, but at the same time, life would be a lot easier if you would just get him some more help with the offensive line. That's all I'm saying. And with the running back situation, am I sure of Brian Robinson Jr.? Because I know when healthy he's productive, but he also has durability problems as well as Eckler. And this is a really good running back class. There's Ginty. There's the running back from North Carolina, Cam Scatterbill. You said he's a combination of Christian McCaffrey and Mike Alstott. Mike Alstott. So I would like for Washington to address that area. And we did re-sign Zach Ertz. By the way, that's another issue that we have to address as well. As much as I like Zach Ertz, he's not going to be around forever. So I think for Washington, there's still more work to be done. Way more work to be done. But I am kind of concerned, though, champ. Look, if you told me if I got the Debo of old from 2019, 2021, this is an excellent move. This is still a good move, though, champ. And to your point, a make it or break a year for him, a 1 year. Sometimes he needs to go to a different organization. He needs a rejuvenation. Just stay away from the Daiquiris and Po' Boys and all that other stuff if you're Debo. But, champ, another weapon is not what we needed on the offense.
No.
We need an offensive line, and we need a defensive line. Because without those components, Washington is not going to get that far. They'll probably make the playoffs because obviously they're in much better circumstances compared to what they were with Daniel Snyder. But I got to say, unimpressed.
They got to say the same thing. Like I said, that line, because you're down to just one guy on that defensive line, and that's Daron Payne. And it's going to be hell if he start asking to be traded. So got to watch your step, Washington. I know this is a new regime, and I know y'all are doing everything you can to be correct in this situation. But you have to understand this. Winning is the best way to turn everything around. And the thing is, it's not like you didn't have a lot of cap space. Chicago went out there and just got it. They was aggressive. You got to be aggressive in this thing. This is not one of those drafts where you can afford not to be aggressive. That's why a lot of these teams are going out, trading and stealing from other teams. It's like, look, this is not that deep draft that I need. I think next year might be a better draft, but this draft ain't that deep. This ain't no deep draft that everybody's just clamoring over. You got the big names, but you have a great running back class. You have the big names, but you don't have, a draft where you can say, hey, this draft is so good. You can see somebody that was projected to be first going in the second. So Washington kind of disappointed.
Oh my Lord.
What happened?
The Seahawks are trading DK Metcalf to the Steelers in exchange for a second-round pick in this year's draft. And the Steelers are signing Metcalf to a new 5-year, $150 million extension as part of the trade.
Okay, I just got a lot. Send that. Oh, I already got it. My guys just sent it to me. So we got a lot of news to report on TikTok today, man. It's getting nasty around here.
Now,
it's getting nasty around here.
But Chip, this is kind of hard if you're Mike Tomlin because you got George Pickens and you also got DK Metcalf. Russ, I believe you should still keep Russ for another year. Or unless you want to find somebody, hell, try entertaining by possibly getting a Joe Milton in a trade.
There's a deep running back class here. You got Quinshawn Jenkins, you got Cam Scatterboo, you got Ashton Jensen. You got a lot of players.
Henderson from Ohio State.
Yeah, Anderson from Ohio State. You have a lot of players. Omarion Hampton from UNC that you was mentioning earlier from North Carolina. There's a deep running back draft in this class. And you got I think Nathan Frazier from my Georgia Bulldogs coming out too. So you got a deep draft class. But got to be proud of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They was aggressive. Now you have two very, very overly emotional receivers that you got to keep in line. And this is kind of a make or break year for a couple of for Mike Tomlin, because if you're not able to keep these superstars in check, there's going to be a lot of questions that's asked about you. So you gotta check. In the great words of Ice Cube, you got to check yourself before you wreck yourself. So you got two very emotional wide receivers. So you have to get a good signal caller in there so you can get both of them a ball and keep them happy.
Who do you think won the trade, champ, between Pittsburgh or Seattle? Because Seattle, they traded DK to Pittsburgh, and Seattle got in return this year's second-round pick.
I think Pittsburgh won it. Pittsburgh needed to be aggressive. They don't have the draft position where they're going to be able to sneak up and get somebody. I don't think a lot of great play, a lot of sleepers are going to drop this Pittsburgh, but not that one player that's going to be that air specialty type. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot.
I think Seattle won this one, champ, because Mike Tomlin, to your point, he's dealt with a lot of personalities, particularly at that position. From the only mild-mannered one he's had was Hines Ward. I mean, you had Antonio Holmes, Antonio Brown,
Juju,
Martavis Bryant, Claypool,
Juju Smith-Schuster, the TikTok band,
George Pickens. Now with DK Metcalf, so to me, I'm not really that surprised, because when you're a wide receiver playing at that organization with Mike Tomlin as a head coach, it's no surprise. But we've seen the results, champ. And my thing is, Pittsburgh added another weapon, but at the same time, just like quarterback can't throw behind his back, how is the wide receiver going to get the football without a quarterback?
They're hoping probably for somebody to drop to him. Mainly Sador or Jackson, because I don't see Cam Ward. I don't see him getting past the first hour.
No, he's going to be projected. I mean, the Titans, either they're going to draft him or Abdul Carter, or, well, I don't believe he's going to the Giants, because I like I said before, when is the last time that the Giants have history of black quarterbacks? Hell, even the Dallas Cowboys, they have more of a history of black quarterbacks of all teams. But hey, here no there.
You know where that quarterback came from, don't you? Dallas.
Yeah.
Came from UGA, Quincy Carter.
Yes.
It's a shame that his career didn't work out, bro.
He was solid during his time in Dallas
Yeah, he
and
was solid. He
in
was
New
real
Orleans.
solid. Yeah, he was real solid.
But my thing is, champ, Mike Tomlin, you complete year 18. Here's what we're gonna see from year 19. You're gonna be productive. You're gonna make the playoffs. There's gonna be a lot of tension and controversy because between George Pickens and DK Metcalf, and with the roster. So at some point in time, champ, is it time for Pittsburgh to move on from Mike Tomlin? Because you talked about the standard. The standard. It's not good enough making the playoffs anymore. Pittsburgh at one before New England, they had the most Super Bowls. It's tied now. What's it going to take in order for Pittsburgh to get back to winning Super Bowls again?
They need to find some stability at their quarterback position. And look, Mike Tomlin, this one's for you. It's kind of like my father used to tell me. He used to always tell me, I'm not your friend, I'm your father. Stop trying to be these players' friends and be their coach. I understand that you are a player's coach, but you have a lot of overly emotional guys in your locker room now. You have George Pickens, who's dynamic but emotional. You have DK Metcalf that looked like he could tell off the world. And sometimes, I remember last year, he broke off something off the bench at one point. So you have to be able to deal with these guys man to man and say, hey, either fall in line or fall 47 stories. That's just the bottom line. Either fall in line or fall 47 stories, because you can't afford to have this. Now your team is getting better than ever. You have another receiver now. You have another one. Now it's that time. Mike Tomlin, if you can't get it done in these next couple of years with George Pickens and these weapons you have, Dwayne Washington already, Big O, guess what? It's gonna be time to ask these questions, because you have to be able to deal with these huge personalities. It's part of the game. These young players these days, they're about brand, they're about being seen, they're about things off the field, they're about seeing who can get the most clicks on YouTube. They're bigger content creators. They're just as big a content creator as far as mind wise as we are. So you got to think about that. You got to be able to relate to these players. Plus, you got to think about this. Out of everybody who's been on Mike Tomlin's coaching staff, none of them are head coaches at this point. None of them. So is that an indictment on them or an indictment on Mike Tomlin?
It's both. Two things can be true, champ. I mean, somebody has to be responsible for not holding you accountable. But at the same time, you are responsible for the bad decisions that you make, regardless of the circumstances. And I hope it works out for Pittsburgh. I hope it works out for Kieran. But there's going to be a lot of drama come Pittsburgh, especially when these wide receivers are not getting the football. Yeah. That's for sure.
That's for damn
sure. Yeah, damn sure.
He's trying to keep it clean.
And I ain't worried about it. Look, people get on me all the time for my NASA hat like I'm wearing right now, so I don't give a damn. But on a serious note, champ, Xavier Worthy, wide receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs, he was released from jail Saturday. He hasn't been charged with the crime regarding the domestic violence accusations. This is a statement from the Williamson County Sheriff's Office. After further investigation by the Williamson County Sheriff's Office and further discussion with a third-party witness, Mr. Worthy and his attorneys, this case is being declined at the time. This is what the Williamson County District Attorney's Office told the Austin American-Statesman. The Williamson County Sheriff's Office will continue to investigate the case, and charges could be brought against Worthy at a later date. Worthy was initially booked Friday night on a criminal charge of assault against a family or household member by impeding their breathing or circulation, according to Williamson County jail records. Now, Champ, you talked about in the video on TikTok, the girl, isn't there evidence that she cheated on him and even was physical against him?
Yes. He hired a private investigator, and she was
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna use some terms that I learned in my military career. She was caught dead to rights. That means in the act of cheating. And
Yeah.
so he commanded her to leave the house.
Right.
Even himself contacted the proper authorities, but didn't want to press charges. So she destroyed a room, scratched his face, and pulled out some of his hair as well, from what the report says. And she is not, yeah. And as a result, an extortion happened. Uh, Here's a word to the wise to all of the young players and the young men and young women. I will say it is National Women's History Month. I will say this: gravy trains have biscuit wheels. I'm going to say this again. Gravy trains have biscuit wheels, and it can fall off the tracks at any time. Now, what does that mean? Anytime that you are riding a gravy train, such as the NFL, in the great words of the Joker, all it takes is one bad day. All it takes is one bad injury. All it takes is one bad game. It could either end in tragedy or hurt, or you not be able to play anymore. Or in this case, it could end by you getting arrested. Remember, there's been players who've been arrested in the NFL that literally, once they got released from their prospective team, got banned. Remember what happened with Ray Rice. Remember. Yeah. So as you're growing within yourself, this applies for men and women. As you're growing, whether it be in the NFL, whether it be in your career, whether it be like PSP, he has 90,000 followers on YouTube now, has followers everywhere. Guess what? As you're growing, you can't take everybody through those damn doors with you, my friends. Because as you're growing, a lot of people's mentality, they don't grow with you. They still want to be on that same bull stuff that they was last year. And if that's going on, you have to do like Xavier Worthy was trying to do and get them out of your circle real quick before they wreck the train. I'm going to give you a quote by Nicky Barnes, and I said it on that video. He said, and I quote, if I can't run the train, I sure as hell will wreck it. If you don't know who Nicky Barnes is, go and look it up. If he said, and I quote, I might not be able to run the train, but I damn sure can wreck it. So guess what? You have to be very, very careful of guys like that wrecking your train when you're in the NFL. You have to be very, very careful. Luckily, now the thing is this. Luckily for Xavier Worthy, he has receipts. He got receipts. He's been in contact with the authorities. He didn't press charges. All of it's on record. He has a private investigator and everything like that. So luckily for him, he has receipts to say, okay, this is the steps that I took in order to get her out of my life. Luckily, he has receipts. But think about the guys or the women who don't have receipts. This could have very well be a career ender for them. So be very, very careful about who you let in your circle when you're making millions of dollars, no matter if you're a content creator like the great PSP, no matter if you're an NFL player, no matter if you're the CEO, no matter if you're whoever, because the wrong choice of people around you will wreck that train, and it's hard to get it back on track. Remember, it took Kareem Hunt for years. And for some people, when they go off the track, they go all the way off the track. Look what happened with Antonio Brown. Granted, he was out there anyway. He was always guilty of his behavior. But look at what happened with him, because when you have people like that in your circle who's not telling you to do the right thing or is trying to wreck your circle, that's what happens. But you got to be real, real careful of that. In my humble opinion, hey, look, Xavier Worthy, you have a BAL on your hands. Big lawsuit on your hands, because I would definitely file charges for defamation of character. I'm definitely filing charges for defamation of character. And I'm making it just as public as you did with my arrest. I'm filing the charges to the full.
I don't
because
blame
he
him.
could have cost me my career. I'm on one of the most notable teams next to the Cowboys in the NFL. Just could have darn well been my career. Defamation of character lawsuit is coming. But as far as the rest of the league, as far as these young men and young women, because we're seeing a lot of these young women, involved in sports as well. The great Angel Reese, great Caitlin Clark, a lot of them as well. Be careful who you let into your circle. Gravy trains have biscuit wheels, and a lot of people, if they can't run the train, they will wreck your train. That's all I have to say about that. Be careful.
Seems like Xavier Worthy knew exactly what he was doing. And boy, he got a hell of a representation, champ, because to hire your own hire your own search firm to even find out that this woman cheated on you. Yeah, champ, I can't blame you. I cannot blame. If someone made false accusations against me, I would sue them, or I would press charges on them for defamation, because you falsely accused me of a crime that I know I didn't commit, and you trying to drag me under this and jeopardize everything that I worked so hard for and God blessed me with. Nah, has to be consequences. So, but I understand your point, champ, regarding young men. Um, I mean, it's a really tough situation, but for young men, hope everyone learned a valuable lesson in all this, and just be careful with the people that you hang out or associate with, because sometimes you don't know if they're always in your best interest. So just be careful who you invite, who you bring around. Make sure that they have the best interest for you, just like you would have for them.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, that's it's a really uncomfortable subject, champ. I know it's something that we don't like discussing, but at the same time, we got to do what we got to do. But
Yeah.
hey, Xavier Worthy looked like he knows what he was doing. I mean, champ.
Them
I mean,
receipts is something else, man. Hey, young
he
men.
had to hire one hell of a search firm in
Yes,
order to get them receipts.
yes. Young men and young women, get them receipts and keep them in there like a tax return.
That's the blueprint.
So
That's
that
the
way, when
blueprint.
somebody come around and say, "Hey, you did it," no, here it is, right here. So keep them receipts, man. Them receipts come in handy.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to something that we love talking about. Wrestling. The Elimination Chamber. John Cena. Whoever thought of all people would turn heel? But he did, champ. You know what? I'm not going to go any further. The floor is yours.
Only thing that I saw, you saw how impactful that this heel run was, because all the thing you saw when you scrolled it down TikTok was kids crying. Wow. I was a kid when Hulk Hogan turned heel. I was mad, but I went. I mean, kids are crying full blown tears. I mean, grown people are crying full blown tears. Kids, grown folks my age crying tears. I'm like, wow.
Went
That's
from
how
Make a
much.
Wish to Take a Wish Foundation.
Hey, that's what happened. So I mean, hey, and the way it was done was perfect. It was perfect. All that joy that built up in the elimination chain of the last ride of the great John Cena, the last ride. He's going to WrestleMania, and then boom, Thanos, just that fast. I mean, Iron Man to turn into Doctor Doom just that fast. But I think it was cool, man. I mean, I have to agree with Flash about the Travis Scott involved. I really didn't think that made a lot of sense, but to each his own. I really, just an added bonus. But
Hey, he's signing up to a wrestling school.
Yeah, he signed him up to wrestle school, but hell, I signed up to be a personal trainer. How'd that work out? But I signed up to be somebody's personal trainer. You know what when you jumping on the trampoline, one of them Pilates classes. I was signed up to be one of them. Let's see how that turns out. Yeah. So I think that was good, man. Like I said, you saw the impact, man, because the only thing you saw when you scroll down the page was kids crying. Because we thought this was going to be the biggest star of the last generation, babyface versus babyface. But it really, that had a dramatic impact, man. Not to mention, man, look, is The Rock becoming the new Vince McMahon as far as the corporation? Because it seems like every time that WrestleMania comes around, it's The Rock putting an obstacle in Cody Rhodes' way. It's The Rock doing that. I'm going to put my brother, I'm going to put my cousin in your way. I'm going to put the bloodline in your way. I'm going to put a tag match in your way to make sure that you don't win the WrestleMania match. And now I'm going to put the biggest star along with myself of the PG and Ruthless Aggression era in front of you. The very guy who helped you win the title. It sort of reminds you of like the Dude Love heel turn, although that was lackluster. Remember when he turned on Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Yeah.
And he was able to, and he was the first ever corporate guy. Because remember, Vince McMahon turned Dude Love into a corporate guy. But it's reminiscent of that, but on a higher level. Because it's just like you just did not expect that. That was crazy. But like I said, the only thing that you saw when you scroll down was kids crying. So it's like, oh man, that's impact.
This face says it for itself. Because when you saw that face, something was going to happen. And speaking of Stone Cold Steve Austin, you mentioned it, champ. There's a possibility he could go to WrestleMania this year. After all, it's in Las Vegas. He lives in Nevada. And look, last year we saw Undertaker proving everyone that even though the Rock, no, the final boss is Undertaker. and with Austin, I would not be surprised at all. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Remember how he made his entrance at Backlash in 2000 when he grabbed the steel chair and hit everyone? Pat Patterson, Gerald Briscoe, Triple H, Shane, Vince with the steel chair. Don't be surprised. He's going to make his grand entrance and he's going to rock the show because, again, hey, who knows? I mean, he's had Cody Rhodes on his show, Broken Skulls podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a possibility.
Hey, you just never know, man. Just never know. There's a lot of the people don't want to acknowledge this, but this is just the attitude era on a higher level. You know, because there's a lot of attitude era going into this situation. There's a lot of it. So, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Let's get into some basketball for a little bit. What were your thoughts? There was the video that went viral. LeBron James confronting Stephen A. Smith. I think it was Thursday night's game against the New York Knicks. Obviously, it had a lot to do with what Stephen A. Smith has said about LeBron James' son, oldest child, Bronny James. Look, I have no problem with LeBron James coming to the defense of his son if he feels like the criticism of his son has gone a little too far or his parenting skills or whatever. I felt like he could have done it privately because, look, it's unfair to everyone. It's unfair to Stephen A. Smith because, again, I'm quite sure he was notified by ESPN agency, which he even admitted in his statement that people informed him that the video went viral. I think LeBron, I have no problem coming to the defense of his son. He should have handled it behind closed doors. And look, it could be taught a lesson. Look, like with the Will Smith, Chris Rock situation at the Oscars, I did not like what Will Smith did. I felt like if he had a situation with Chris Rock regarding the joke he made about Jada, handle it behind closed doors so that no one has to see. I felt like that's what LeBron should have handled in that situation. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, man, look, I had a hey man, look, My father was kind of like would have did the same thing as LeBron. I'm just gonna be real. In fact, I've seen it. So, I have no problem with what LeBron did because I've seen my father do it. But at the same time, that's not the way I would have done it. I have no problem with the way it was done, but at the same time, I wouldn't have done it. The thing is this: criticism is going to come. You're now in the NBA at this point. You can't block it. You can't block that criticism. People are going to have their own reservations about Bronny at this point. And you got to ask yourself, with him going down to the G League, although he's doing well in the G League, he's not doing good on the NBA level. So there's going to be criticisms. And the thing is with LeBron is this. With the whole situation of him saying, the face of the league and him having those comments about, why Anthony Edwards said he did not want to be a face of the league. I mean, he's proven a lot of the media members' points at this time about how these players are not able to accept criticism. You're going to be criticized. I mean, when Jello Ball was taken, his family got criticized. Shedeur Sanders is a top pick right now going into this draft. He's criticized. So it's going to come with the territory, especially when you know that your father not only got you drafted, but got you an $8 million guaranteed contract. It's going to be criticism. Not to mention, at first, and I do express at first, the Lakers was not predicted to win anything when it came to the beginning of the season. They wasn't scheduled to do nada.
There wasn't expectations to win a championship, right?
Yeah, prior to Luka, there was no expectation. They was like, hey, you could have got that in order to get a better developmental player. But it's going to come with the territory. The criticism is going to come with the territory, especially when people think or know that it's nepotism. Now, is it right? Especially when you're proving yourself in the G League right about now? Nah, one may argue. But the thing is, you have to understand that that's going to come with the territory. Now, at the same time, I will give Stephen A hell of a lot of credit. He did say, hey, that was not the NBA player. That was a father trying to address me. And like I said, my father knowing who he is, would have done the same thing. He'd have checked him in it's on site. If I catch you somewhere, it's on site. Hey, stop doing that.
I bet Mama Champ would have done the same thing.
Yeah, both of them. Both of them would have did the same thing. It's on site when I see you about my kid. At the same time, I wouldn't have done that. Hey, man, look, I'm going to save you a lot of public embarrassment. I know it's going to be embarrassing. I know that you kind of said some stuff I didn't agree with, but I'm going to take you behind closed doors and check you in that way. That way you ain't got to hear about it on, your sports show and things like that. At the same time, you got to let these guys do their jobs. Their job is to criticize players. Their job is to criticize front office moves. Their job is to criticize owners who don't get you what you need to win a championship when you are still at an optimum at this point as a basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think with the whole Bronny James criticism for the Los Angeles Lakers, I don't think it was so much as them drafting Bronny, but more so like, hey, you still have LeBron James playing like he's 31 years old. Why are you so concerned with getting Bronny when you could have, used that second round pick in order to add into another trade or something in order to get him? I don't think it's so much as that. I don't think it's so much as them drafting Bronny as though they wanted the Lakers to do more right by LeBron in order to get more championships. Because if Bron gets another championship, guess what? That brings more viewership to the NBA. The GOAT conversation starts all over again, especially if LeBron plays again next year, especially if he goes on to the NBA Finals and beats Boston. But I don't think it's so much as criticism towards Bronny himself as it was towards the Laker organization. Because it's like, man, you could have got somebody else who was more ready, NBA ready than Bronny to help LeBron win a championship. I don't think they have anything against Bronny. I think they wanted the Lakers to do more right by LeBron. But I can see it both ways. Like I said, my dad would have checked him in. And ironically, that's the first person after that incident happened that I got a call from was my father. He was like, I'd have checked him in too. But like I said, just because they would have done it, that doesn't make it the way I would have. But like I said, I don't blame LeBron, but I don't think it's so much as Bronny that they had a problem with. A lot of the commentators they have a problem with. They're looking at the Lakers like you could have did a lot better in order to do right by LeBron as far as not bringing PR to the league, PR to the Lakers, but bringing a championship to the Lakers.
And LeBron James, he's expected to miss a week or two with the groin injury, champ. The Lakers suffered a loss against the Boston Celtics. How do you feel about your Lakers?
They're looking pretty good. But LeBron missing a couple of weeks, it's going to be on Luka at this point. So let's see how Luka can lead this offense. Let's see what you can do without some of the players that was at Dallas. Let's see what you can do with Austin Reeves and some of these other guys. So let's see. Because it's going to be up to Luka at this point. But if anybody can do it, Luka can.
Mm-hmm. And Luka has actually been playing well. I mean, just look at the last couple of games. You look at the New York Knicks one. And I just think once Luka gets himself in better condition, better shape, I think the Lakers will be just fine, man. Shout out to JJ Redick. He's done a hell of a job coaching this team. Deserves a lot of kudos. Let's talk about the Golden State Warriors, champ. Since the Jimmy Butler trade, they've been playing well. Steph and Jimmy, they've been clicking.
I wasn't too sold on this trade because you had a lot of volatile personalities in that trade, Draymond and Jimmy. But I think they're doing pretty good now. It's like, if I'm LeBron, if I'm the Lakers, if I'm a LeBron fan, I'm hoping and wishing that the Golden State Warriors don't win a championship this year. Because that's going to start up a hell of a lot of conversation if Steph Curry gets number 5. Steph Curry gets number 5. That's going to start up a lot of conversations that a lot of people are not ready for. And that's not to say that I agree with those conversations, but it's going to stir up a lot of conversations. Because it's just like that up and down cycle that the Golden State Warriors have been going through since they won that last championship. Steph stayed there. They was able to get him some things. Whereas, the jury has been out on LeBron. It's like when things start looking kind of iffy and then at that roster, boom, it's time to pop smoke and go somewhere else. So you got to think about what's going to happen if, and that's indeed if, Steph Curry gets that number 5. Because if he does, it's going to stir up a lot of conversation that I don't even think I'm ready to have.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of Steph Curry, for Friday night show of the Sports PSP podcast, he will be in for Babyface or Heel. There's going to be him. There's going to be Anthony Edwards. And there is one more person that I will include. Prime time. Deion Sanders.
Yes.
So, fellas, that concludes the rest of the Sports PSP pod. Undisputed World Champ. Any final words? And also, March 9th is the 28th anniversary of the death of one of the greatest rappers to have ever blessed the mic, the Notorious B.I.G. Recently, his mom, Valletta Wallace, passed away. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you, Biggie, for all the great music, the great content that you gave us. Thank you, Valletta Wallace, for blessing us with a tremendous MC who is your son, one of the greatest to ever do it. Thank you. Any final words, champ?
Thank you, Mrs. Wallace. And thank you, Mr. Christopher Wallace. I'm going to address them as Mr. and I'm going to address Mrs. Wallace as Mrs. Wallace because they deserve all the respect and credit in the world. Not just for the music, but Mrs. Wallace was hell bent on getting to the bottom of who did that to her son, to the point that she filed a $500 million lawsuits against the LAPD. Not to mention, Biggie Smalls was worth $10 million when he first passed away. She turned that into a $160 million empire. So her kids, Biggie's kids and his grandkids will have something for themselves for years to come. Mrs. Wallace did that for those kids in the absence of her son. And I applaud her for doing that. When they talk about a mother's love or a grandmother's love, that's what it does. You create ways when it seems like no way. Because Mrs. Wallace wasn't a rapper. Mrs. Wallace wasn't even a super public figure. But
Elementary
for her,
teacher.
she was an elementary school teacher with some business savvy. And for her to multiply her son's wealth by more than 100 times, and not to mention, although he passed away, his catalog is going on sale. I think 50% of his catalog is going on sale for $75 million that's being put up by his estate.
Genius.
Hey, and then after a while, and after that, and after the statute of limitation, I don't know if it's called a statute of after the limitation runs out on that, it goes right back to the family once again.
Absolutely. And also, happy International Women's Day. Also, happy Women's Day month. Shout out to all the great women out there, moms, aunts, sisters, grandmas, whoever. Thank you for all your sacrifices, and thank you for everything that you've done, letting women know that they can make a difference in this world as well, and that they are more than capable of anything. So shout out to everyone. Shout out to my guy, Undisputed World Champ. Thank you for hopping on to the pod, man. Y'all stay safe. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all weekend. Don't worry, Sports PSP Pod Friday night, 9 p.m. Highlight of Friday nights, as Champ always calls it. We will have BRF on the show. Y'all stay safe and peace.